In this video, we will be looking at the economic impact of COVID-19 via the Spanish flu. First, we'll start by discussing the economic impacts of COVID-19. Unless you've been living under a rock for the past year, you all know what COVID-19 is. A respiratory illness caused by a newly identified virus that gives us respiratory tract infections. And it's also pretty contagious. It spreads mostly through discharge of the nose when sneezing or coughing, and also through droplets of saliva.
With that aside, let's focus on its economic impact. As you all know, the effect of COVID on the economy has been disastrous, to say the least, leading many countries into economic crisis. So bad, in fact, that it has been deemed as the most important global economic crisis since the Great Depression, earning it the title of top dog among all economic disasters. At the forefront of this economic turmoil are the people who have lost their jobs. From March to November, the average unemployment rate in Canada was an astounding 10.23%. That's almost double the pre-pandemic average of 5.7%. To make matters worse, the arrival of COVID saw negative GDP growth of minus 0.19% from March to November. That accounts for a GDP reduction of almost $37 billion, which, after a quick Google search, is equal to the entire GDP of Uganda. What does this mean, do you say? Well, it indicates a significant reduction in individual consumption, expenditure, investment, and net exports. The cause of this is mainly due to governmental restrictions, and, to a lesser extent, the fear of the spread of COVID-19. Going beyond the millions of jobs lost across Canada, the most harshly impacted industries are the retail and catering sector, which both depend on high customer traffic. To put this impact into numbers, in the start of the impact, there was a decrease of 13.6% in retail sales due to the massive closing of stores across Canada. Although the crisis was soon balanced by the increase in online purchasing, many of these small-scale businesses have been forced to close their doors permanently.
Now we'll discuss the impact of the Spanish flu. The Spanish flu, also known as the influenza pandemic, is known to be the most severe pandemic in history, almost like COVID's older brother on steroids. Although its exact source is unknown, it spread worldwide in 1918 to 1920 by troops coming home from World War I. It is supposed to have infected 500 million people, killing 50 million, significantly more than COVID. Yet you might be surprised to hear that despite all these deaths, it didn't really have a disastrous effect on the economy. On the contrary, the most intriguing aspect of the Spanish flu was the relatively small impact it had on unemployment. Despite it affecting people in their 20s and 30s, the backbone of the working economy. So why would this be the case? This was all due to the ongoing World War I effort. Because of this, the government couldn't afford to make factories stop production. As a result, the unemployment rate during the pandemic was as low as 1.8%. That's not to say that the economy wasn't negatively affected, however. The GDP still dropped an average of 6%. However, because of the war and other issues, the government restrictions were way more lenient than ones today, due also in part to the war effort and the lack of awareness about social distancing measures and masks. For reasons, these two pandemics had very different impacts on the economy. The main reason for this is World War I. At the onset of the Spanish flu, North America was devoting nearly 38% of its government spending towards the war effort, fulfilling a never-ending demand for coal, steel, machinery, textiles, and other products needed for the effort. Because of this, work in factories, mines, and shipyards continued. This largely offset the effects of such a severe pandemic on aggregate economic activity.
Now, I'm obviously not saying that we should start a World War III to get our economy going again, but it sure did help them in 1918. In addition, whereas the coronavirus had arrived at the time of booming stock market values, the outbreak in 1918 occurred right after a downturn, making it difficult to assess the actual impact of the virus, especially when the market did even better the following year. That's not to say that the Spanish flu wasn't bad for the economy, but compared to the coronavirus, the more lenient restrictions did less to halt manufacturing. As for the future of our economy, if the Spanish influenza is anything to go by, we can expect a rapid economic recovery. In 1918, the industrial production bounced back by more than 25% between 1919 and 1920. Major gains. This gives us reason to hope that we will soon get back on our feet and return to work once the contagion subsides. Meaning Mr. Tabbery will no longer be able to laugh at people shoveling snow off their cars, since he'll be the one doing it himself.
And that's about it. Thanks for listening to this presentation.